How do we attract the consumer? How do we serve the consumer? How do we make the consumer happy? So being able to speak to them every day, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, have that conversations about what are they really looking for? What do they need? What do they want? And how do they want to get it? How do they want to find it? And how do they want us to bring them along?
Welcome to Hearts and Carts, the CPG podcast, the podcast about the people behind the products that are winning hearts and filling carts. This cast is for anyone with an interest in the world of consumer products. We're your hosts, Justin Osborne and Alex Hill, and our mission is to bring you weekly content that helps you be a better and more informed CPG professional. Welcome back to another episode of Hearts and Carts, everyone. It is Alex, your co-host, and I'm here with Justin, and we are getting prepped for a great conversation with one of Justin's former colleagues from Vega. Justin, who are we going to be chatting with today?
Yeah, the Vega network is pretty cool. You meet a lot of interesting people that worked at Vega and have gone on to do some really cool things, and this gentleman definitely fits in that mold. We're meeting with Mike Remes, who is the North American Director of Sales for KOS Naturals. I worked with Mike at Vega for about 3 years while he was the strategic account manager over Vitamin Channel. Got to know him really well, always impressed with his work there and what he was able to do in that channel, just the way he articulates sales and his view on all things CPG. So really excited to get into this one.
Agreed. I thought Mike does an amazing job articulating a lot of different aspects of the consumer products business. And it's a really informative conversation we had with him. So excited to share it with all of you. If you're not already, follow us on social media, either Instagram or LinkedIn. And if you have a moment, a 5-star review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify is so very appreciated. Without further ado, let's jump into the conversation.
Food is me medicine, food is me cure. Food that keeps us far from the hospital door. Food is me medicine, food is me cure. It's organic veggie give me.
Morning, Mike.
Good morning. With the video on there. I'm sure Justin is seeing me.
Yeah, I missed that beautiful face. How you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Look at you got the branded Under Armour shirt. I love it.
We try hard. We try hard, man. One thing we do not skimp on is quality. And that goes all the way down to the polos and the pullovers, my friend.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's good. How's everything else going with you? Personal life
It's good, man.
Everything good?
Everything's great. Just I'm down in Florida right now. We're at the Soho show. So I'm hanging out here, kind of less craziness. I got your emails and I was like, oh man, this is a great weekend for me not to have to navigate around that, right? I kind of forgot I was away. And then when I realized it after we booked the time in, I said, this works out. It works out really well as a matter of fact. I can guarantee some quiet for 40 to 60 consecutive minutes.
Yeah, instead of maybe kids running around in the background or something, which might be my case. Yeah. We'll have to see.
All good, man. How's everything going on your end?
I'm good, man. Life's good. I've moved from downtown Vancouver out to Vancouver Island to, get a bit more space, live out in the suburbs now that Leo's 3. So a bit of a big move there and working remotely, and life's good. Yeah.
Can't believe he's 3, man. That's nuts.
Yeah, it feels like, yeah, I know. I remember talking to you, oddly enough, when we were first telling people that my wife was pregnant. We were at our North America meeting in Vancouver. I remember I started telling people, I remember you talking about your kids and stuff. Yeah, it doesn't feel that long ago, does it? But it was almost 4 years ago.
I feel like COVID kind of dilated time in everyone's memory. Like
Well, that's definitely part of it. But the other thing, kids in general, I'm here with a friend of mine that I've worked with a long time ago, and I've known him forever. And we're talking, he has twins. He had kids before I did, and his twins are 10 now.
Wow.
And then we're in the car yesterday. We all showed up at the same time. So we drove over to the hotel, and it was one of those things. It was like, oh my God. 10 years. I remember when his wife was pregnant, and I was, I had just gotten married, I think, or was about to get married. And I remember thinking, oh man, this guy's having kids. Maddie's having kids already. And they're 10. My daughter just turned 8. My son's 6.5, and looks like he's 12. He's a giant. But it doesn't slow down for you, which is cool. But it's good to hear you're working from home full time. It sounds like that's the life right there.
Yeah, it is nice. Like Alex and I have talked about this on the podcast and otherwise a few times, and it does add a lot of extra time. Like when I was commuting from Vancouver into Burnaby, it was 30, 45 minutes each way. So that's an hour and a half right there that you're out of the house that in theory now I'm home for, right? Like I can easily pick him up from daycare, which is great, and spend time with him right after, so things like that. It's a lot of extra time in the mornings and nights that are really nice, right?
Yeah. I think you do the math on that, it works out to close to 6 weeks of vacation away from your steering wheel. So
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
300 hours over a year.
Yeah. And if you go back to like the days of like when I was commuting like to Mississauga to those places and I was like 2 hours each way a day. I mean, I don't even want to start thinking about that again. That was silly. But
Well,
I,
it's nuts because I find that it doesn't only give you more time back just to commute. It's not a one for one trade-off. Because what I've found with, I've been doing it a long time working from home, but I found with other people that I talk to too, there's more of a willingness to engage with work outside of your typical day, right? So
Definitely.
folks, I think you're more willing to pop on if you wake up, but I do this all the time. I sleep terribly, right? So I'll wake up sometimes at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning for the day just because I sleep awful. So, maybe I'll read a book or maybe I'll watch some TV, but maybe something's on my mind for work and I'll just engage. I'll pop in and do what I got to do. Takes it off my plate for later. I'm also more likely everyone in my house goes to bed at like 8:30 except for me. So same deal. 9 o'clock rolls around, and if there's something that I can't get it out of my head that I want to do a finish today, I can go sit down for an hour and just get it done. Or if I've got a late afternoon meeting the next day, instead of spending the morning tightening things up, I can do it now. I can do it in the evening.
yeah.
And I think that just because you have that kind of freedom, flexibility, and time back, I find for me and people I've spoken to, it makes you more willing to do it as opposed to when you
Yeah.
had this grind of 6:30 in the morning to 7 p.m. commute, work, all that crap. Every meeting you've been in started 15 minutes late because everyone was getting from one meeting to another and getting a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah.
You're just like, yeah, you know what? I don't mind. I'll do an extra hour of work. I'm down. I'll log in right now and check it out. So I think there's a lot of other benefits to that. I know Elon Musk would probably disagree with me, but that's okay.
If he wants to comment when we post this and disagree, that'd be fine with us.
Yeah, it'll be all right.
He,
It'll be all right.
he certainly might. I guess he's got something on me, right? He's a billionaire, and I'm certainly not. But
Yeah, he's done a few things, but
Yeah.
yeah. Any guy that can go buy Twitter with the change in his pocket, essentially, which is how he treated that transaction, he's probably financially and maybe career-wise got one or two steps ahead of me. But,
Yeah. 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 His success is part of my 5-year plan for sure. That's that's what we're going for.
I don't think it's going to be that hard. I need a rocket ship company. I need to bring something like internet to the world. Yeah, how hard could all that be? He doesn't seem like he's that stressed, so I'm good.
I mean, yeah, there might be electric cars, but I'm sure there's other types of cars that haven't been invented. So it's,
You know what I really want to do is I want to find a way to make something that's been around for well over 100 years and convince the rest of the investing world that they should value it like a completely different type of business. Like he's got a car company being valued like a tech company because it's a fancy car. I want to do that with coffee makers or something, right? Like that's the key. I think that's the genius behind what he did there with those cars, not making
Totally.
electric cars that are super luxurious, right? Right. So I'm gonna set my mind to that. Maybe who knows? Maybe I'm already doing it with protein. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. So let's introduce you, Mike, to the world here. So on today's episode, we have Mike Remes here, who is the North American Director of Sales at KOS Naturals. I know Mike from Vega. We worked there together for a few years. I guess 3 years it looks like as I look on here. Well, a lot of that I was on the sales strategy side and Mike was on the strategic account manager side. So we worked together fairly closely during that time. So he's had a really interesting career starting at like the store level, sort of going up to now managing total North America business for a really exciting brand. I know when we were at Vega, we were talking a lot about this brand sort of growing and blowing up, and excited to see all the cool things you're doing there. So Mike, what we like to do is sort of go back to the beginning of your career. Like what were you doing when you got out of school? How did you get into the space? How did you sort of kick off your career? And then maybe walk us through how you got to sort of where you are today, and we'll ask a few questions along the way.
Awesome. So before I do that, I'm going to go a little bit out of order just because that's how I roll.
Sure.
And give really quick naming correction here on KOS. We're KOS Naturals, and I'll give you the really fast background on the name too, because I remember I've heard everything under the sun. KOS is the Grecian island which Hippocrates hails from. And Hippocrates said something to the effect of, let food be thy medicine, let medicine be thy food. And we can talk more about it later, but that's essentially
Yeah.
the guiding principle behind KOS. It's getting healthier through our nutrition and getting the good and right types of nutrition. So it's really going back to looking at how Hippocrates saw things. And so
Yeah.
it ties in so well with that. So I'll table the rest of that because I know we'll talk about it later, and I'll get back to the way you wanted to start us off here.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
funny
like
because I thought that that's Alex and I had a conversation with this. I thought that that's how it was pronounced. And then when I looked on the website, it had the phonetic K, the letter, and then A, and then S. And so I was like, oh, chaos. So my bad. I'm sorry.
no, it's all good. It's that K sound. Actually, it's funny too.
Yeah.
Setting up at so I had that conversation with someone. His wife is from somewhere very, very close to that island, Kos. And he said that they own a home very close to there. So he came over, he saw us setting up our displays and stuff, and we were chatting about that. But yeah, really interesting name. And when we dig into it, and I think maybe that's something, it's on the packaging already, kind of a call out, and it might be something that we can lean into heavier as we look to do new
Yeah.
things. But it's a great story when you get into the origin story of the
Yeah,
brand. And again, I know
sure.
we'll talk more about that. I don't want to jump too far away from your format, although Justin, you know full well I'm really good at driving conversations in different directions and getting us back way later than we wanted to be.
All good.
So I'll try to stay on task. But yeah, like you'd mentioned, I started in this industry on the store level. I was working with GNC when I was in college, and then when I got out of college, I worked at GNC. I started working in the stores, eventually was managing some stores, and it was a really, I think, a fundamental part of who I am and how I kind of view the business now because, and I think retail experience on some level, whether it be getting into retail all the time or having that retail background when you've worked in the stores and understanding what's going on in the store and the consumer journey, because that's really what we're all after. How do we attract the consumer? How do we serve the consumer? How do we make the consumer happy? So being able to speak to them every day, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, have that conversations about what are they really looking for? What do they need? What do they want? And how do they want to get it? How do they want to find it? And how do they want us to bring them along? So that was the first part of my kind of journey into this, and I enjoyed it every day. It's funny. Some of my best friends in the world to this day come from working there. One of my great friends is here in Orlando with me now at a different company at Soho. We got to hang out yesterday for the first time in a long time. So I met some great people doing that, and it kind of started that networking and connections that's brought me all the way through to where I am today. So yeah, that was the beginning of the journey though, and the next step for me was going to work for Select Nutrition on the distribution side. At the time, Select was a division of UNFI, the natural product side of UNFI. UNFI Wellness now, they're still there. They still have some great people that I used to work with when I was there, still there. So they're doing that deal. I worked on the sales team there, was inside sales, and then I was the channel account manager. This is going back far enough when none of us in CPG in our industry knew what to do with the internet. Amazon was this big scary monster, and all we knew was there was a lot of money there, right? So they identified that internally. Tom Grillet and the team said, we need someone who can focus on this stuff. And I said, hey, I'm kind of young, kind of new, but I'll do it. And they said, yeah, this guy seems like he might know what the heck he's talking about. They were half right, and it was a half good idea. And I got to learn a ton working with, at the time, some of the monster online retailers. You guys are probably familiar with Lucky Vitamin. Drugstore.com's not a thing anymore, but they were a huge account for us that we worked with. So I got to get a lot of experience working with folks like that, and it diversified my background. I was able to work a little more cross-functionally than I did when I first got there, because there's, the bigger the customer, the bigger the logistics issue, or the bigger the inventory issue. So I was able to start touching different teams, and that was a ton of fun. That's something that I enjoy to this day is being cross-functional. I've got a deep curiosity for all things I don't know. So I love taking away whatever I can from any conversation about how are we going to do a better job getting product where we need to get it at a better price, and how can we do this better. And even if it doesn't touch my everyday function, I love to know about it, learn about it, and find out how I can impact it to make us better organization. Yeah, that was the deal. I know you kind of mentioned that you saw that I broke away career-wise from CPG in the natural products industry.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Money motivated, quite frankly. Early in your career, you kind of think, I should be making more money. There's more money out there. Sales are sales. I'll sell anything. Quickly realized how wrong I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I took that left turn. It was one of those things, and I tell people this all the time. This industry that we're in, selling natural products, selling health, helping people live healthier and better lives, you kind of don't realize it, at least I didn't, that you enjoy what you're doing, and you like the fact that there's this positive impact until you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So took a minute and I realized that. And it was one of those things like, all right, how do I get back? I didn't realize I enjoyed being in the stores, being with the product, talking to people, and then that positive impact when someone buys something and you know they're doing it because they want to get healthier and they want to find a way to live a better life where they're feeling better and, maybe prolong their life or treating something that's bothering them, keeping them from living their optimal life, being their optimal health. So I really enjoyed getting back to that. I was really lucky to have that opportunity.
Did you feel like you took anything useful away from that experience? Like I know because I was recruiting, right? So I know it's a different type of sales. Like it can be, from what I understand, a bit of a grind. But probably some good lessons in there to bring back. And
100%. I think, without sounding too negative about the experience, because I don't want to be, I learned what I don't like. And I learned, to your point, that I don't mind a grind. Everything's a grind in one way or another.
Yeah.
But that type of grind didn't work for me.
Yeah.
The end result just wasn't what I wanted to be doing, what you're selling, the way we did it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I learned what I don't like. I met some really interesting people and I learned some great ways, I think, to interact and to talk. One of the things I took away, I had a VP who said all the time, everybody wants to buy, but nobody wants to be sold. And as cliche as that might sound, it can't be that bad because it's still in my head this many years later. It pops in there.
Yeah.
And I think it's always kind of gelled with the way I like to approach things. I like having, almost every interaction I have on the sales side is a conversation. I don't care if I go through a 60-minute meeting and we talk about the product for 20 of it, if we've built a relationship and I understand the needs of my retailer and I know what they're looking for and what they want. We can circle back to the nuts and bolts of the product sometimes, but I think it's really important for them to know where we're coming from, where I'm coming from, and that I'm here to help and do the right thing for the shared business. So I think I took some of that away, but more than anything, quite frankly, I learned how I like to sell, what kind of sales I like to do, and what I don't like.
Yeah. I think it's very different selling services versus physical products too, right? Like just so much more real when you see it all the way to, you say you like cross-functional, you would have gotten not much of that. It's like you've placed the person, you're done. Like there's so much more to experience in the world of products.
Yeah. And I mean, there was something too, I'll be honest, a little bit soul crushing that almost every single Friday you ended up having to call a handful of people and tell them that their contract was over sooner than expected. And, starting Monday, you don't need to go to work anymore. That was, that was rough after a while because you're sitting there at 5:30 on a Friday calling people on their way home from work and saying, hey, by the way, you don't work anymore. That just got, it got to be rough after a while. So that I didn't mind giving that piece up at all, but, it was great though. There were some good things. And again, I think I learned a lot about what motivates me because at the time when you're young and just thinking about how do I take the next step, I want to grow, I want to make more money, I want to have this title or that title. And I kind of realized pretty quick, no, I don't. Yeah, everyone wants to make more money, but there's maybe the slow, steady path to do that. And I'm less worried, less concerned with what they call me on my business card than with what impact I'm having on the organization and on the folks who are consuming what I'm selling.
Yeah, makes sense.
I can relate to the sort of natural products, right? Like if you're going to sell a CPG product, because I've done the exact same thing. I thought, hey, why not sell something that is better for people, better for the planet, right? Maybe better for animals, whatever your motivation is. But, if you truly believe a product is like enriching people's lives, then it's a lot more fun to sell. Like you have a much more better connection with the product. So I found that with Vega, that was part of the reason I went there. And I'm sure that sounds like part of the reason that you went back to consumer goods.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that I've been really lucky to kind of move. I feel like my career is kind of naturally and almost unintentionally taking a progression towards better for you products, even within that industry, right? Like after I left recruiting and I was very lucky. So someone that, to continue on the career journey piece, I had worked when I was at Select Nutrition. One of the brands we worked with, Basic Research, Craig Rich ran the UNFI account for Basic, and he stayed there. And he called me up one day and he just kind of said, what are you doing? Because I'm kind of looking for someone in your geography. And I said, Craig, I work for you now, it sounds like. And I was really lucky. He brought me on board. And, first of all, Craig shepherded me through a lot of growth while I was there, from kind of, geographically running the Northeast in a region to coming onto the desk and running our grocery business and then more of our natural side and larger FDM accounts. So I grew in the time I was there to really understand a lot of things. And I got a lot of autonomy working for Craig that I hadn't had in the past. He just kind of, he was a guy who said, I trust you, go do it and ask me what you need. You know, tell me when you need stuff and I'm here for you. So I was able to grow a lot there, and he kind of brought me back in there. And at Basic, you know, we owned Ceravital, if you're familiar with Ceravital, which is an anti-aging brand. We owned Novex Biotech, which is growth factor 9, and Testravax. Actually work with Shaquille O'Neal now, which is super cool. Shaq is all over their website and all that stuff. So I regret not being there to meet that guy. That would have been awesome. But
yeah, he's on my bucket list of people to meet just because I want to see how large of a human being he actually is. Like, I need that scale just to see it. Once, like, I remember as a kid getting the Pizza Hut basketball. Alex, you might remember this.
I do remember
that had his hand on it.
Yeah.
As a kid, my hand was like the size of his palm. I'm just like, how could a human being be that big? I need to see this guy.
You know, so funny side note, I don't know if I hope you didn't make it out to Expo East, because if you did and I was there and I didn't see you, I'm gonna be
No, I wasn't there, unfortunately.
But the Mountain was there from Game of
Oh
Thrones.
yeah.
Oh wow.
And if he happens to hear this, I profusely apologize for not knowing or being able to pronounce your real name. Please don't come after me. Huge fan, but that was one of those things where you're like, how many feet away I was, 50, 80, and that is a giant, and I'm really far away. As I get closer, he's going to get bigger. I think I'm going to stay here. So I feel similarly about Jack. It was huge. And I think he's lost weight, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken. I think he actually trimmed down, but he's huge. But yeah, that was a brand where we own Xantrex and Relicor, which are two of the kind of longest running diet and weight loss brands in the US. So working there, you know, we were helping some people, but I think that as I got to Vega from there, it was cool because I went from a product group that I think people were seeking some help and could get it from the products we made, to products and an organization and a company that was focused on making sure we were giving folks things that were good for them, good for the environment, good for the planet. We're focused on several different facets. And I don't think it mattered to me before I got there, quite frankly. And I will say this, and Justin, I know you'll back me up on this. I don't know if I've worked with more passionate people than some of the folks at Vega. And when I say that, I really mean passionate for the mission that they believed in, which it really wasn't business driven, but because the business tied into that passion, I mean, they were so dedicated, and it was really something to watch and to see. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I arrived as like the corporate slug from Toronto that came in and was used to working at bigger companies, not so much even SCJ, Alex, but, you know, like PepsiCo and things like that, right? Like huge corporate structures, multiple buildings, like very different way of working. When I got there, it was a completely different world. I showed up, I've told this story before, Mike, maybe to you, but I showed up for my interview. I flew in, wore a full suit, got there. No one was wearing a full suit. I looked so silly. There are dogs running around. Everyone's in t-shirts. Everyone's hanging out, like laughing. I'm like, what am I doing? And I just loved that. And I just like grew to love it. And you're right. Like, people were so passionate about animals, about the planet, about the mission that they were driving. All the little things, right? Like vegan lunch offerings that they had, like all those things add up, and people were just really in love and invested in the brand. Like, the brand was a part of them. They had built it from the ground up. And so it was so intertwined in their lives, which was really cool.
Yeah, I think that.
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
Alex.
Go ahead.
I was just going to comment and kind of back you up. I think I'd seen just in the past, a lot of times people get invested in the business and invested in the health of the company. And it was different there because so many of those folks were invested in, I want to say, the brand, but really it was more than that. Even it was the lifestyle. They were again, passion is the only word that comes to mind that I think describes it. And I think the way I'm viewing it might not even translate, because it was just a fire for what they thought and felt the brand could do, even beyond what it did and what it could do. It was definitely really cool to see and inspiring sometimes, because, you know, similar to you, I don't know if I call myself the corporate slug, but I kind of came in with more of a dollars and cents mindset a little bit, and it motivated me to do my job better. I won't say, you know, I'm still not vegan, but I could understand and appreciate where that came from, and I think it motivated me to do things a little bit better and work, you know, dive in a little bit deeper, because I could see that there were people who had that passion. We're all on the same team, pulling the same direction.
Yeah. One thing I was curious about is just differences between working for distributors versus working for a manufacturer like that. And I feel like you've kind of touched one here with the passion and the vision. But is there any others? Like, you say you like working cross-functionally, obviously probably different functions to work with when you're working through the whole chain of the creation process and everything else. But just curious about any of the differences you observed or experienced.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd say it was a really big difference to go from having, I think our catalog at Select was about 15,000 items, give or take.
Yeah.
So to go from selling 15,000 items and hundreds and hundreds of brands, even at Basic, where we had multiple brands operating, it was still an offering of probably sub 100 products. And a lot of them were similar. You had, offshoots of, we had 3 different Xantrex and then a few different types of Relicors and things. So they're all very similar to one another. So that was a big difference, I think, just in the day to day. What it did allow you to do, I think it made it a little more challenging because if you ran into someone who just didn't care about buying a diet pill, and that was a big problem. The diet pill was dying when I was there. So it was challenging sometimes to sell that in. Right? If they didn't care about a diet pill, you were kind of hosed. But when you had a catalog of 15,000 items, everyone needed to talk to their Select rep at some point, and they were all going to buy something. And it was just a matter of, can I get a little bit more, as opposed to how can I open this up and how can I blow this out? It was more, let me find what they're looking for, because I've got something that everyone wants to buy. If they have a health food store, if they have a natural product store, there's a bunch of stuff I sell that they need. So that was a big change just from the day to day. Speaking of the cross-functional piece, you have less opportunity, I think, at a distributor to be involved in it just because of the scale.
Yeah.
Logistics is a lot of folks, and they don't really need your input. And there's not a lot that what you do input is going to do to change what they're doing on a day-to-day. So there was a lot less cross-functional work. With brands, you can get into it a little bit deeper and a little bit more sometimes. And I think that, again, our focus, I felt, in distribution was selling. We were selling products, we were selling marketing, we were selling marketing space, but we weren't necessarily marketing the brands, doing things to grab attention. Whereas on this side of the business, as you guys know, you're figuring out how do we get somebody interested in our product, because it's one of 10 distribution. I've got all 10. I just need you to know that I can sell them, and I have them. You pick. It doesn't matter too much on the distribution side. I just want to make sure you've got the whole offering, and I'd love you to buy it from me. So you've got to get a little more focused when you're selling and when you're presenting your offering. You've got to be able to explain key differences in brand, key differences in performance, key differences in product. So I feel as though on the sales side, it's different so far as you have to have a much more laser focus on product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense. One of the things that we like to ask people is how they structure their days to be efficient. You talked a little bit about it at the very beginning, right? With working from home, how you can do things at night after the family goes down, that type of thing. I know you're at a hotel right now in Florida, so it's a little bit different than your regular daily routine. But what does your routine look like to be efficient?
Yeah, I need to, and I wish I could break. See so many folks talk about how they don't look at their phone for 2 hours after they wake up, or whatever it may be. I wish I could do that.
Same.
But I don't know if you have the same feeling, guys, but I can't chase that nagging what happened last night feeling if I don't at least look. I've started to use the do not disturb on my phone now until 7 a.m. I always turn it off early, but I at least keep it from waking me up unless I'm afraid something crazy is going to happen. But I like to look and just know what I've got in store for me. So when I end a day, first of all, the next day starts at the end of the previous day for me. I try to have a rolling to-do list. It's the only thing that's really, really worked to help keep me on task. Is I've got my list of things I've got to do, and before I end my day, I carry over everything that didn't get done. I try to reprioritize, move things to the top, star things, whatever works for me. And there are a few different ways I do it to make sure I know what has to get done tomorrow. This got moved, but I can move it 3 more times and it's all good. Or this better get done before the end of the day tomorrow, or I'm in some water here. So I try to move everything forward, and then I like to get a really early jump on what's going to slide its way into that list of to-dos today. And that can kind of guide a few things, like when everyone leaves to go to school at 7:15, my wife works at the same school as my kid. So at 7:15, all 3 of them are out the door and I'm good to go. So, that can guide whether or not at 7:15 I can get a quick workout in or I need to get after it. But I try to follow that list. I try to follow it pretty closely, and I try to make sure I check in with it a couple of times a day, because I'm sure you guys experience this. Sometimes you get a little caught off guard and a lot starts happening fast. So I try to make sure I have regular times to come back and look at what didn't you do yet, Mike?
Yeah.
What are you putting off that you can't? And so that just kind of keeps me on task, because I find that throughout the day, there's always something that comes up, and there's always someone you end up talking to, and there's always a call that goes long, and then a call that you jump on to follow up from that first call, and all of a sudden it's 3:30, 4 o'clock. And you're like, oh man, what happened today? So trying to schedule that time in, I ping myself with reminders throughout the day, either from from my Gmail calendar or on my phone to where you at. It'll say something as simple as that, like it'll literally be a reminder that pops up, where you at, and I can kind of ground myself in where am I at, what didn't happen in the first half of the day that was supposed to. So that's more the overview, but that I think is, the days are as fluid as they've been since I've gotten here, and can change as quickly as they do. I've found that that's the best way to do it. At Vega, it was a little bit different, because I think we had everyone kind of doing a little bit more of a focused day, right? We all had a little bit, not less on our plates, but more defined roles, more defined account responsibility. And so that was really easier to stay on task with, but the tasks were sometimes rather cumbersome. And as you probably remember, Justin, they would come at you quickly out of nowhere and needed to be done before you finished reading the email, sometimes it felt like. So that changed things. The dynamic was a little different there in how I handled some of that stuff. But that's I think what works for me. I try to keep it simple. I've done almost everything and tried almost everything organizationally. Yeah. And overcomplicated is just what it comes down to. It doesn't work for me. I need it simple.
Fair enough. I'm a big to-do list guy too, and I like write crappy to-do lists on a pad of paper and then carry them over as well. So that seems to work for me to check things off. So let's talk about your current role now and what you're doing.
Yeah. So the really interesting, exciting thing about being here, and I'll bring up before I even get into that, I feel like so many folks who we knew that were at Vega and moved on seem to have gone into similar types of companies and company structures where they're earlier stage. I think there was an entrepreneurial spirit there that, as Vega grew, became less core to the business. They needed less, right? And I think a lot of those folks who really had that feel and wanted that went and sought it out. And that brings me back to kind of how I feel and what I'm doing now. I get to be involved in a lot more. So, the day to day, it's sales, and we're selling, and we're making sure that everything from an account standpoint is done. Everyone's taken care of. And as we move through any changes, any new information that has to be disseminated, we're on top of it for all of our accounts. But also, being able to be involved in production, forecasting is so important when you're so close to keeping your inventory levels tight and making sure everyone's got what they need. I mean, we run OTIFs, on time and fulls are 98.5% or better almost across the board. So it's something we're really proud of, that we have an amazing team of folks that work really hard to make sure that's the case. Sometimes it means a bunch of us are running around in the background trying to make sure it gets done on time, but it does get done on time because everyone's all in with it. So being able to jump into some stuff like that on the production side and make sure that what we as a team are seeing and selling and doing is communicated in a timely fashion and at the right time, get to jump into that, get to be involved with what are we looking at? What's next? What are we going to sell next? What's the next natural progression for us as a company? I mean, we have some people who are way smarter than me who kind of steer that, but being involved in those conversations and just saying, this is what my customers tell me they want, and this is what I'm seeing in the data. And that's a big part of it too. And a big part of my day is living in the data. We have amazing folks at Spins that we work with that get us some great data. And we have an amazing team that gives us some great reporting through Power BI called Hungry. These guys do a phenomenal job of dissecting that, similar to the tools that we had at Vega, Justin. I'm so impressed that a company of the two different sizes of those two organizations, and we're able to have data parsed and broken down for us in a similar manner. So spending a ton of time in data, looking at competitive data, looking at category data, looking at our own data, and understanding what's happening, not just to our brand, but other brands, and telling that story. We're doing a lot of it ourselves. We're a sales team of 3. We've got our Chief Revenue Officer, Derek Deerwater, who is a CPG maven. It's like opening an encyclopedia, whether it be from an account standpoint to an account manager standpoint, who runs that account, who's a category manager. If you want to know what a routing guide says, or you want to know what their policies and procedures are on a certain thing, it's faster just to ask, right? It's all committed to memory for him. So it's amazing to get that and that knowledge base that he has. But it's Derek, myself, and then we have a Northeast regional manager, Spencer Lynn, that we work. He's phenomenal too. But it's just the three of us.
Wow.
So we get, yeah, we're tiny but mighty. We long full days, but we're getting a lot done. I mean, we're very proud of what we're doing. We're the fastest growing plant-based protein brand in MULO in any time period. Pick a time snap, and we are the fastest growing, highest growth rate brand. Just grab and share left, right, and center. And if you're on LinkedIn, you'll see a couple of really, really exciting announcements. I can say this when we're in Walgreens as of about 6 days ago, maybe a little bit more. We launched in about almost 3,000 Walgreens. And there's some other stuff coming down the pipe that I think is going to be really impressive for
Awesome.
folks to see. We've done a lot, and it's really exciting and it's a ton of fun. So, as far as that goes, I'm kind of involved, and I get to engage in all of that. And hopefully it's all going really well. It seems like it, but it's nonstop when you have a small team of folks who are so dedicated to growing the brand and building the brand.
Yeah, that's a small team for the size of the business that I think you are. So you're 3,000 doors at Walgreens. I know you guys have a large online business as well. Any other sort of, major retailers that you guys are sold in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long list. We've had distribution at CVS for a little over probably more than 18 months at this point. We've been in Walmart. We actually, we grew in door count at Walmart in the last modular, which we were really
Awesome.
excited about.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Walmart's great. I mean, you talk about turning dollars. It's a great place to do it. We just broke into Publix over the summer, where I hesitate to keep going and leaving someone out, but I mean, we're full chain at Whole Foods with protein and with our blue spirulina and our blue spirulina blends, our reds and greens. So there's a lot of really cool, fun, exciting growth there too to come. There's a lot of things that are going to happen in the next few months there, I think, that are going to be really exciting. And one of the things we've been told at Whole Foods is we're actually the most accretive protein brand in the set that they have when they brought us in. So it's nice to know that we're not just another brand and a Me Too brand, but we're making an impact on sales and on the shelf. We're not just grabbing someone else's share. We're creating more. We're growing the pie as opposed to taking a piece of it. And total points of distribution, we're going to crest 100,000 pretty soon.
Wow.
And when I came on board, and this isn't to pat myself on the back, because I had very little to do with it. I had very little to do with it, rather. But in less than a year ago in March, we were somewhere in the 45, 55,000 total points of distribution. So a lot of the groundwork had been laid previously by Derek, because it was a team of one. It was Derek knocking down this distribution until Spencer and I got here in March. And he had so much of the groundwork laid to get past that 55, and now it's just a forward rolling ball. There's a few things I don't want to mention because it's not announced yet, but new classes of trade that have been opened by the team, different places that we haven't been selling that are really exciting, that are going to come down the pipe really soon. So that's awesome to see. And for us to sit back and look at the numbers and, keep an eye on what brands are we passing in a total share capacity, share market, and see that we're at a stage now where we're putting some key brands that are, getting to be legacy brands kind of in the rear view, and that we're able to reach more consumers than they are. And we still don't have the distribution points that some of the power brands do yet. We will, fully confident we will, and we will fairly soon. But to be doing what we're doing while we're still growing into it, I think is really exciting. It makes the days a lot of fun.
For sure, yeah. And it sounds like you guys have done a nice job of going across different channels, right? Like drug, mass, natural, grocery, online. Like that's something that a lot of companies struggle with to be successful in a Whole Foods, but also get into a Walmart, also get into a CVS, right? Like it is tricky. So it's nice to see that you've been able to kind of expand across all.
Yeah, well, what I noticed there, and I've seen the struggle a lot over the last however many 12, 15 years. I've seen brands struggle with it, and I think two of the things that are huge. One is you've got to understand how to work on Amazon and have that in conjunction with your brick and mortar business, because if it gets away from you, it can cause a lot of issues. And I think we kind of term ourselves a digital first brand. DTC and Amazon are where we grew out of, and it's where we have a lot of core competencies in that, and in our leadership team. And these are our co-founders, Alan Stevens, Tony Stahl. They have a lot of competency there. They know it. They've forgotten more than I'll ever know about how to do business. on those platforms, and they're entrepreneurial folks in general. They're the way their minds work and they problem solve these things is amazing. So, and the team that they've put in place to do that, they've been phenomenal, not only at growing the brand online, growing the awareness, but in allowing us as a total brand to move that awareness to brick and mortar retail, and also make sure that we're not letting Amazon letting the way that business online is hinder our perception in brick and mortar, which I've seen a lot for other brands. Then the other piece is just channel differentiation. So you've got to have pricing strategy and structure and offering uniqueness across different channels. If we were selling the same protein in Whole Foods as we were in Walmart, meaning the same size at the same pricing, we'd have a lot of issues, right? So to have multiple offerings that we've nice delineation across channels, I think the eye towards that from the beginning, it's much easier to do it from the outset than to try to stuff all that back in the bag afterwards once it's out. So I think, the folks in the leadership team has done a great job keeping that front of their minds as we move forward. So we know exactly, internally, we all know what we're selling where. You get a meeting, someone books a meeting, no one has to talk about what are we bringing there. We know what size segment, we know what our rankings are. We know how deep we need to go in a lot of these places. Some places we're going to be successful with 2 offerings, some we can be successful with 7 or 8 different offerings. So we do a really nice job of understanding that going in to try to be set up for success from the outset and to not cause any blurring that we have to deal with later, because it's very, very difficult once you have that in place to undo it.
Yeah, for sure. The channel differentiation is so important, having just a channel strategy, because you're right. Otherwise, if you try and MacGyver it in later, it becomes incredibly difficult, right? So you have to have that on the outset. So that's just good planning. So, 100,000 points of distribution across almost all channels across the US, getting some momentum in Canada as well. What's next for the brand?
Well, I think there are still some key retailers in the US that we want to make sure that we can gain partnership with and work with. I think we want to finish expanding that out, because our honest feeling is that as phenomenal as those numbers are, and the growth rate is undeniably insane. And it's not, we look at prior period often, so we don't look at year over year and get caught up in ourselves and think how amazing we are when we're lapping business that wasn't there last year. We look at prior period in shorter terms, and it's still great growth, and it's faster than most other brands. We pulled a snap for last year, which is far away at this point, 2021, but there were really 2 brands that showed share growth last year, and it was KOS and it was Oreo. So anytime that we can have a positive reference with, the undeniable king of the mountain at this stage of the game is great. And when you can look at all the other power brands that you would include in that plant-based protein, and none of them were in a position to do that, we're really proud of that. But when we also say there are some places where we're still going to gain distribution. We can still knock down distribution. So I think focus is something we've talked about in a few different ways. And I think continuing to keep that focus on those key points, and then also having growing share of shelf is really important for us in our existing retail partners. I think it's something Vitamin Shoppe is a great example of that. We were able to go from our core protein offering and our 15 serving proteins at Vitamin Shoppe. And then in October, we launched in with our beetroot powder, our coconut milk powder, our inulin powder, plus our blue spirulina and a couple of our blue spirulina blends. We'll have more items launching next month. I think our ashwagandha and lion's mane's already gone live on their website and is rolling out in the stores. And we've got another product right behind that in the same reset. So we're working with 3 different teams in a place like Vitamin Shoppe right now, and we're growing share of shelf. We're growing out into the stores, and we're becoming just more of a brand block. And I think that's something that we're going to really be able to capitalize on. Our superfood boosters, our single ingredient products, which are all USDA organic, they lend themselves so well to our core protein business because ingredient stacking is huge. Better for you things that we can add to our protein shake. Folks don't just necessarily want to put protein and almond milk in a shaker cup and go for it. They want some ashwagandha because they want to take advantage of some of the cognitive benefits of an ashwagandha or a lion's mane or a mushroom complex, or the additional fiber that we can add, or the MCTs through the coconut milk powder that we have, which is amazing. So to bring those in, blue spirulina powder is something that blew up last year on TikTok in April. It became huge, and we were nationally one of the few you could get in retail. Whole Foods were chain wide with that product. So it was a huge boon for us, and it's something that we've now started to be able to grow out in other places. So bringing that in, becoming more of a part of our consumers' staples, more of their pantry, so that they can get everything they need from us, or more of what they need, more of what goes into that blender can come from a brand that they trust for quality, a brand that they can identify with. Speaking of cost specifically in this case, of course, but I think that's something that's going to accelerate the growth even more. And there are a couple of really exciting things on that front that are going to happen, and we'll have to talk about it later because I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag just yet. But as far as those products go, I mean, the packaging is so exciting. We've got gusset bags, and that's back to better for the environment. They use, I think it's something like, what is it, 20% less plastic. I did some really interesting math on the protein bags and the carbon impact moving from a jar, an HDPE jar, to the bag is staggering. When you're talking about it, I ran some really interesting numbers on how many cars it could pull off the road, the equivalent of cars in the United States that it would pull off the road, and the carbon emissions, and it's thousands. If you were to switch one retailer to that, you're talking thousands and thousands of vehicles coming off the road. I think it was 2,300 was what it was for 700 and odd store chain. So what it takes to drive all of that HDPE around and to drive empty tubs and everything. So it's amazing to be able to do that. So we've resized our single ingredient superfoods into those offerings. It's far more efficient. It's great for shelf efficiency. The consumer loves that format as well. So that's really nice. And it's got our branding on it. It's got our unique doodles to it. Every item looks like art, right? So that's something we're really excited about. And I think it's something that just ties in so well with our core business on protein.
Very cool.
Love it. Mike, a question we like to ask people, we call it brand fan. So what's a brand or a product out there in the market that you think is doing super great stuff or has super great products, inspires you, and you maybe want to give a shout out to?
Oh, wow. A bunch, but I will say I've always loved good packaging, right? And that's one of the things that I caught my eye about KOS off the bat was, holy crap, nobody does this, right? Look at this thing. Cool. And I was in Harris Teeter, which is a regional grocer in the Southeast, my grocery store. And I'm walking down the aisle and I saw this can of sparkling waters, Ora Bora. And the flavor profiles are awesome, crazy different, and they're awesome. But the packaging, I looked at it and I said, wow, we've got like a cousin in water, is kind of what it made me think of. This phenomenal packaging with really cool designs. And it's a really cool brand voice. I think what they do is a lot of fun. And they're in a really, really tough space because sparkling water is exploded. It's similar to, better for you sodas becoming like that too. Huge Olipop fan, by the way, while we're talking about that.
Shout out to Disa. She's killing it over there.
Absolutely. I had the what's that? The apple, the crisp apple, the seasonal flavor.
Yeah.
I grabbed that at Whole Foods twice in the last 2 weeks. I think they were 2 for $4, and I took everything off the shelf a couple of times.
Yeah, that brand's on fire. She's doing an amazing job. I mean, no surprise there. She's the best. So excited to see that.
No, I think we all saw that coming. But those are two really tough spaces. And Justin, I know you probably better than I do know how difficult it can be just to be in drinks in general from the RTD stuff that we were involved in. And so to be able to do that with the logistics costs and the way that freight has gone through the roof in the last 12 to 18 months, right? Mm-hmm. Like to be able to ship full cans around the country and find a way to do it without bankrupting yourself. It's really impressive. So those are two brands though that I really love seeing on the shelf, and I'm excited to see every time I do. And I usually end up buying both of them and spending $2 and change for a can of water or soda. It goes counter to my normal consumer practices. So they're doing a really good job being able to get me to go in on that. But I love what they do. I think those are two really fun, really exciting brands. There's 1,000 of them. Pick an energy drink brand and I could talk about it forever. I love caffeine.
Yeah, no, very cool. And I agree with you. I'm a sucker for good packaging. I think if you're working in this space, you become like a huge fan of good packaging because you know how much time goes into that, how much time people spend on it. And when a brand really stands out, it sticks in your mind because there's just a sea of products. So agree. And so last question for you, Mike. The last question we like to ask people is, what advice would you give to someone starting out in the space? Your younger self, basically, right? Someone that wanted to get into the CPG space or wanted to be an entrepreneur, just wanted to get involved in consumer products. What would you tell them?
Be a sponge is kind of how I would put it, because I've been really lucky. I think about this more now. I guess this means I'm getting old, But I look back more than I ever used to. And when I look back on my career, I think how lucky I've been at almost every stop to have these amazing professionals who have known so much, been so willing to pass this information on and be able to take away from all that. And I can hear the conversations I have every day where if I sat down and looked at a transcript of some of the things I say, I could probably write people's names next to some of these, right? Like I could write next to the words, I could write Bob Sperling next to a lot of things I say every day. I was lucky enough to work for Bob when I was at UNFI and learn a ton from. And just I could go down that list. There's a lot of people I've worked with, and I think that what I'd say is don't miss those opportunities. Don't, for whatever reason that you don't absorb it, you don't listen to it, you don't retain it, and you don't think about it. Don't do that, because everywhere you go, and this is something someone said to me years ago that's always resonated with, every single person you meet is better than you are at something. And on a professional level, it's far more pertinent because every person you work with has competency in something that you don't and can teach you something that you don't know, no matter where they're at. There's something they know better than you do. So making sure you pull in and you retain that information, I think is so important. It can put you in a place to know things. And then the other thing I would have loved to have told myself a long time ago was, be confident enough to speak when you have something to say. I can think about a lot of meetings I've been in over the years, especially younger in my career, where you want to say something, you have something valuable and valid to say, but you're looking around and you're thinking, oh, 2 directors and a VP and the president of our division here, I better just shut up and write some stuff down. And that's the wrong way to do. If you've thought out what you want to say, say it. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to have missed something, because I've never worked anywhere where when you do that, if you're wrong, I've never been anywhere where someone's looking to say, what's wrong with you? No, stop.
Yeah.
Mostly it's people want to say, I appreciate what you've got to say. Here's why I don't know if it exactly works. And you can learn something. Never be afraid to be wrong or speak up. I think those are 2 things. One I've benefited from because I always have soaked up knowledge from everyone I could. But I would have loved to have been speaking more, raising things more often and sooner in my career. I think that's big for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been in meetings, especially younger in my career, when I didn't speak up and then kicked myself for not doing it. And as I got kind of further along in my career, I saw that with junior people, and I've given them that advice. Like, if you've thought of something, like, you can speak up. Titles don't really matter, right? Like, everyone's entitled to share their opinion of what's going on. And especially if you have, a well-rounded knowledge of the situation, we need your input. So that is important. Absolutely. And I love the idea about being a sponge. I remember when you first started at Vega, we had a meeting and you used that exact term, that you want to be a sponge, which is cool. So you definitely lived that, which is awesome.
It's one of those things, I think, I don't know how unique, how lucky I've been is, right? I think a lot of people have been in similar positions because there are a lot of really great CPG professionals out there that you can learn from. I can look at every company I've been at, think of 1, 2, or 3 folks that I have learned so much from and grown so much, and right up to and including where I am now. And just being able to sit in some of these calls, I listen. There's sometimes where I do have to counter to my second piece of advice I gave it and literally just shut up, because there's a masterclass of analysis and problem solving going on in front of you. Like, this is how I feel. I'll sit there and I'll listen to our leadership team when they're speaking, and I'll just be like, I need to stop. Not because I don't have any value to add, but because I don't want to miss anything. Because these guys are breaking down a problem in a way that I would not think to do. There's other ways to look at it. So they're there. And, everyone in our organization, our whole C-suite is more than happy to grab the phones for anyone in this company to call and say, hey, can you talk to me about that for a while? I mean, every single one of them will talk to you for as long as you let them and tell you what they're thinking and how they got to somewhere and stuff. And that's amazing. And I think more folks in our business are like that than not. And so just taking advantage of that, and then getting to that point. Like, I don't know that much, but hopefully I know some stuff that I can pass on and impart on some folks. That's kind of where I want to be, where I want to see my career transitioning to, is passing on some of that information, taking some of the things I've learned and put together from some of these just excellent and hyper successful people. And I've made my own little piece of it and passing that on to other people younger in their careers.
Well said. Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Mike. Really good to see you, dude.
Yeah. Great to meet you.
It was great. Yeah, it was awesome meeting you, Alex. Justin, I miss you, man. It's great talking to you.
Likewise.
I will say, I think for our last year at Vega, this is the cadence we were on conversations anyway. Like, I think we were going like 8 months, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it is great to chat, man. I'll say this is the last thing, and if we're done recording, that's fine too, because this is just for you really, but man, I can't believe the amount of people I still talk to on a fairly regular basis from Vega, man. We had some great people there,
Agreed.
and I'm such a big fan of seeing what everyone's doing. You included, man. This thing is so cool. This podcast that you guys got
Thank
going.
you.
I'm a huge fan. I listened to a few episodes to try to understand what you guys were gonna do, if it was some ambush journalism or something. You know? I didn't know what
Gotcha.
know. But I'm so excited for you, man. This is a really cool thing to do. And I love what you guys are doing. It's tons of fun to listen to for people in the industry and stuff. So awesome stuff. And I'm really thank you for having me be a part of it, and letting me rant for the better part of 60 minutes here about some stuff. Hopefully it was coherent enough to use.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
It's great to have
you
you on.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun doing this because of this exact reason, to connect with people I haven't talked to in a while, right? So some ex-Vega people for sure, some ex-people from other companies, and it's really fun to just like reconnect and connect with people. And great example, right? I have your cell number now, so which I didn't have before because we change numbers when we leave companies and stuff, right? So it's nice to reconnect with a lot of people and just hear their stories. And I learned stuff about you today that I didn't know. So that's sort of cool too.
Yeah, I think I'm a big podcast fan. I think the fact that you can have a conversation like that, the fact that people want to listen to people talk to one another in some of these formats is almost hilarious to me, right? But I think it's so cool that you can tune in. It's almost like you get a snapshot of a really interesting person. And I'm not saying I'm a really interesting person, but other people who are involved in these things, you can kind of step into the life of someone you find interesting.
Yeah.
And just, what are you doing for an hour? Like, let me check this out. It's really cool. And when it's industry relevant, I love it. So this was a ton of fun, man. It really was great connecting again. You got my phone number, my new phone number now. So obviously text me, because if you call me, I think there's some international rates involved because you're still in Canada. But yeah, text me.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Well, thanks for coming on. Enjoy Florida while you're down there. It's in the 20s and raining here. So enjoy Florida, and we'll chat soon.
I will do my best. 30 minutes away from stepping on a show floor, which is my favorite thing in the world. So I'm excited. And yeah, absolutely. We'll talk soon. Thank you, guys.
Right,
Awesome.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, how about that? So good to catch up with Mike. Just a really genuine dude. Great to hear his voice, talk to him. One of the weird things about working, with people across North America or remotely is like, I only got to see Mike like a handful of times in person, but on calls with them all the time. And then of course, as we move away from some of these companies, you lose touch with people a little bit. And so just super thankful for Mike reaching out. He's a fan of the podcast. He said really nice things, which, that's the way to my heart. Say nice things to me. And was glad that we got the chance to sit down with him, and you got the chance to meet him. What do you think, Alex?
Well, I thought I was a little jealous that he was in Florida. For one, I think that, as someone sitting in Ontario right now, shivering, I feel a certain degree of envy, but I thought he was great. I thought he was really, thoughtful, and I really liked a lot of what he had to say about his career and what he shared. I thought, his decision to come back into consumer products after making kind of that transition out to recruitment, I thought was like, one of these, really honest and authentic assessments of how you take inventory of what in a job works for you and what doesn't, and take action to change it. And then I thought, generally speaking, like I thought his overall kind of POV on how they're building the business they're building today, which I thought, was a pretty cool story and pretty impressive, almost doubling the distribution points in the last 12 months was really, really like really good learning for me. And just how they operate with intent to diversify their overall distribution strategy, and clearly are having success, not just doing that, but also maintaining velocity through a strong brand that's a good consumer fit. I thought it was really informative for me, and hopefully for our listeners. How about you?
Yeah, it feels like, when I was at Vega, I remember talking about KOS and what they were doing, because they were building a distribution and, a competitor. And Feels like since Mike's gone there, it's like every week there's a new distribution win. So he's absolutely crushing it in that role. It's always interesting when we meet with people that one of us already knows from a past life or from working with, and to me the takeaways are a little bit different, just because I already know him. But it's like he does these things that will ensure that he is successful. Like one of them you talked about, like he takes action. Like he's very deliberate in what he does and the decisions he makes, right? I think he has an incredible point of view on like how to build a team, how to build a business, how to look at business in general, the CPG world. He really knows his numbers. Like he's talking about like specific numbers in terms of distribution points and things like that. And then the biggest piece with him that I find is that he shares credit so well. And like, not only does he share credit and say things like, I didn't have anything to do with that. This is the person that did that. He specifically names the person that did it and when they did it, which I always find is like so impactful.
I thought he had a lot of, care and humility in talking about what is, nothing happens alone. You're always having help. And I thought he did a great job of taking pause to, call out the people who made various things, various successes that he's been part of possible. I always appreciate that.
Yeah, just an overall great guy. I can't say enough good things about him, but hopefully we'll catch up with him sometime soon. Here comes our plug. If you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, follow us on social media. 5-star reviews go a really, really long way. And
do it.
We will chat soon. Bye, everyone.